October 7th, 1943. Espiritu Santo, New Hebrides Islands. I am Seaman First Class, Eugene Fluckey, Supply Officer aboard the USS LST-449. Sweat beads on my brow as I check the anchored cargo net, its ropes taut under the weight of crates bound for Guadalcanal. The deck vibrates from the engines below, and the salty spray stings my eyes in the humid dawn. Our convoy prepares to sail north, carrying supplies through waters patrolled by Japanese submarines. Records indicate that U.S. naval logisticians moved 1.5 million tons to Pacific bases annually, a steady flow that kept isolated outposts operational despite the threats. I double-check the lashings, ensuring every box of rations and ammunition stays secure for the voyage ahead. The horizon looks calm now, but reports of enemy wolf packs have reached us from recent runs. Tension rises in the silence of the harbor, broken only by the creak of metal and distant calls from the crew. We know the risks, the unseen torpedoes that could strike without warning. Yet the chain of islands depends on these deliveries, each one a link in the advance toward Japan. The net holds firm as I step back, the weight of the decision to sail pressing on all of us. Does this voyage turn the tide? In the vast expanse of the Pacific Theater during World War II, the island-hopping campaign demanded a logistics network unlike any before. From late 1942 through 1945, U.S. forces advanced across chains of islands, from the Solomons to the Marianas and beyond. This strategy bypassed heavily fortified Japanese positions, seizing key outposts to build airfields and bases closer to Japan. The effort relied on naval resupply convoys, coordinated by the U.S. Navy's Service Force, Pacific Fleet, including units like Service Squadron 10. These mobile support groups operated from anchorages such as Espiritu Santo in the New Hebrides, Noumea in New Caledonia, and later Ulithi Atoll in the Carolines. Seaman First Class Eugene Fluckey served as a supply officer aboard the USS LST-449, a landing ship tank that formed part of these convoys. His vessel, typical of the workhorses in the fleet, carried everything from ammunition and rations to fuel and construction materials. The LST-449 participated in operations around Guadalcanal and the Central Pacific, navigating routes fraught with enemy submarines and air threats. Convoys often included a mix of Liberty ships, Victory ships, tankers, and escorts, sailing in formations to protect against Japanese wolf packs. Distances were immense, with voyages from San Francisco to forward bases averaging 30 days, and supplies moved over 6,000-mile lines of communication. The scale of these operations required precise coordination. Petroleum products alone averaged 290 to 830 tons per month in the first half of 1943, delivered by tankers to keep aircraft and vehicles operational. By the war's end, U.S. merchant shipping had reached 54.1 million tons total, transporting essentials like 88,000 tanks, 2.4 million trucks, and 41 billion rounds of ammunition. Daily supply requirements per serviceman in the Pacific stood at 67.4 pounds, covering food, fuel, and materials, a figure that multiplied across millions of troops scattered over isolated islands. Submarine threats added constant risk. Japanese doctrine focused submarines on fleet actions rather than commerce raiding, but they still sank 48 American merchant ships and over 100,000 tons of shipping between 1942 and 1943. U.S. escorts and intelligence helped mitigate losses, allowing convoys to maintain flow. Bases like Espiritu Santo grew into hubs with 400,000 square feet of outdoor storage and warehouses stocked for thousands. Reality check number 1. In January 1944 alone, U.S. submarines sank 300,000 tons of Japanese shipping, reversing the threat and securing sea lanes for Allied resupply. U.S. Navy Historical Center records. These convoys not only sustained combat, but adapted to terrain and weather, with ships unloading over beaches when ports were unavailable. Engineers built 111 airstrips and 441 piers, enabling faster turnaround. The system evolved from early chaos in Guadalcanal, where supplies arrived piecemeal, to streamlined operations by 1944. Mobile fleet trains with oilers and repair ships allowed underway replenishment, keeping task forces at sea for months. The human element grounded the effort. Crews like Flunkies faced typhoons, enemy patrols, and mechanical strains, yet delivered consistently. This adaptive maritime support set a precedent for extended campaigns, influencing future U.S. naval logistics in remote theaters. The coordinated voyages of U.S. naval logisticians through Japanese submarine threats formed the backbone of the Pacific Island hopping campaign. These efforts ensured that isolated outposts from Guadalcanal to Iwo Jima received steady supplies despite vast distances and enemy interdiction. By adapting convoy formations, escort tactics, and unloading methods to unpredictable conditions, supply officers like me maintained operational tempo. This meant calculating fuel consumption against submarine patrol patterns, adjusting routes based on intelligence from codebreakers, and prioritizing cargo nets for rapid beach transfers where harbors did not exist. The process involved precise mechanisms. Convoys sailed in zigzag patterns to evade torpedoes, with destroyers screening the flanks, while aircraft from escort carriers provided air cover. Data from hydrographic surveys guided selections of anchorages, reducing exposure time during offloads. In 1943, for instance, the average convoy speed held at 10 knots, balancing fuel efficiency with evasion needs, while turnaround times at bases improved from weeks to days through mobile repair units. This adaptive maritime support not only sustained combat forces, but set a legacy for U.S. operations in extended campaigns. It demonstrated how disciplined logistics could turn geographic challenges into strategic advantages, influencing post-war doctrines in remote theaters like Korea and Vietnam. The resolve of seafarers, grounded in data-driven decisions, ensured that no outpost fell to isolation. Subtle tension lay in each calculation, where a missed metric could delay an assault or expose a fleet. Yet the system's resilience, built on American ingenuity, proved that coordinated supply lines could outlast threats, shaping naval power for generations. The sea rolled under us as the USS LST-449 steamed out of Espiritu Santo Harbor. October 7, 1943. I stood on the deck, hands gripping the rail, the anchored cargo net swaying gently beside me. It held crates of sea rations, 105mm shells, and aviation fuel drums, all lashed tight for the run to Guadalcanal. The air smelled of diesel and salt, thick with humidity that clung to my uniform. Our convoy formed up, 6 LSTs like ours, flanked by 2 destroyers and a pair of corvettes. The lead ship signaled with flags, and we fell into line, engines throbbing in rhythm. I checked the manifest again in the dim light of the supply office below deck. As supply officer, I tracked every ton. We carried 500 tons this trip, enough to sustain a battalion for a week. The weight pressed on the hull, making us ride low in the water. "Submarine country ahead," the skipper had said during briefing. Japanese I-boats patrolled the slot, that narrow passage through the Solomons. We zigzagged at 10 knots, course changes every 10 minutes to throw off any periscopes. By midday, the sun beat down, turning the deck into a griddle. I supervised the crew shifting some crates to balance the load. "Secure that net proper," I called to a seaman wrestling a rope. Fiction. He nodded, sweat dripping from his brow. The tension built as we pushed north, the islands looming like shadows on the horizon. Lookouts scanned the waves, binoculars steady. A destroyer ahead dropped depth charges on a suspected contact, the booms echoing across the water. Water columns rose, white and foaming, but no oil slick followed. False alarm, maybe. Night fell quick in the tropics. Blackout rules meant no lights, just the phosphorescent wake trailing behind. I took my watch on the bridge, the anchored cargo net, a dark shape against the stars. The radar operator hunched over his scope, green glow on his face.
30 degrees, sir.
"Contact bearing 30, range 8 miles, he whispered. The skipper leaned in, voice calm. "Alter course to 270. Increase to flank speed." Engines surged, the ship vibrating under my feet. Tension coiled in my gut as we waited, the sea hissing along the hull. Minutes stretched, no torpedo wake. The contact faded. I exhaled, wiping my face with a sleeve. We resumed course, but sleep evaded me below. The bunk creaked with the roll. Thoughts on the outposts ahead. Guadalcanal's Marines needed these supplies, their airstrip at Henderson Field running low on fuel. One missed convoy, and the chain broke. Dawn broke gray, rain squalls sweeping in from the east. Visibility dropped to a mile. I climbed back to the deck, checking the cargo net again. Ropes held, but water sluiced over the crates. The crew pumped bilges, voices low. Mid-morning, the alarm sounded. General quarters. I grabbed my helmet, heart steady but alert. A lookout shouted, "Periscope sighted, starboard beam!" The destroyers peeled off, sonar pinging. Depth charges rolled overboard, explosions shaking the air. Water erupted, and this time, debris floated up. Wood, oil, a hint of wreckage. The convoy pressed on, no losses. Relief washed over us, subtle but real. By afternoon, we approached the unloading point off Lunga Point. Beaches crowded with landing craft. I directed the ramp down, the anchored cargo net swinging out over the side. Marines waded in, hauling crates through the surf. "Ammo first," I ordered. Fiction. A sergeant grinned, taking a box. Unloading took hours, the ship rocking in the swell. Enemy planes buzzed distant, but our Cap-B from Henderson kept them off. As the last crate hit the sand, the weight lifted, not just from the ship, but from the mission. We had threaded the threat, delivered the goods. The outposts held another day. The turning point came on November 15th, 1943, during a resupply run to Bougainville. Our convoy had sailed from Espiritu Santo 2 days prior, loaded with 1,200 tons across the ships, artillery pieces, medical kits, and fuel for the Seabees building airstrips. The weather turned foul midway, with swells reaching 20 feet and rain reducing visibility to half a mile. I noted it in the log. Winds at 35 knots, course adjustments every hour to hold formation. Japanese submarines had adapted their tactics by then, shifting from lone hunters to coordinated packs after losses to our hunter-killer groups. Intelligence from Pearl Harbor, via decrypted messages warned of I-175 and I-19 operating in the area. The skipper called all hands to stations as sonar picked up faint pings. Possible contact bearing 180, the operator reported. Tension mounted on the bridge, the anchored cargo net creaking against the strain of the waves. We altered course west, but the storm played havoc with the escorts. One corvette fell back, her engines struggling in the chop. That's when the torpedo wake appeared, a white streak cutting through the gray sea. The lead LST took evasive action, but the hit came midships on a Liberty ship astern, 1,500 tons of cargo gone in minutes. Flames licking the water despite the rain. Debris floated past us, crates, oil slicks, men in the water calling out. I directed the crew to lower boats, but the skipper shook his head. Can't stop the convoy. Signal the destroyer, fiction. His voice stayed level, but his knuckles whitened on the wheel. We pressed on, the loss rippling through the formation. That sinking forced a reroute, adding 12 hours to the voyage and burning extra fuel. Our tanks dropped to 60%. The outposts on Bougainville waited, their radios crackling with urgent requests for ammo as Japanese counterattacks intensified. This inflection shifted our approach. Convoys after that incorporated more air cover from escort carriers, reducing exposure time. Mobile repair tenders joined later runs, fixing damage at sea rather than in port. The storm and submarine strike highlighted how weather amplified threats, turning routine voyages into tests of endurance. Yet it reinforced the chain. One delay could stall an assault, but adaptive routing kept the flow steady. The anchored cargo net, now salt-crusted and frayed from the waves, symbolized the hold we maintained. It swayed in the hold below, a reminder that resupply wasn't just movement, but a calculated push against the elements. The turning point came on November 15, 1943, during a resupply to Bougainville. Our convoy had sailed from Espiritu Santo 2 days prior, loaded with 1,200 tons across the ships, artillery pieces, medical kits, and fuel for the Seabees building airstrips. The weather turned foul midway, with swells reaching 20 feet and rain reducing visibility to half a mile. I noted it in the log. Winds at 35 knots, course adjustments every hour to hold formation. Japanese submarines had adapted their tactics by then, shifting from lone hunters to coordinated packs after losses to our hunter-killer groups. Intelligence from Pearl Harbor, via decrypted messages, warned of I-175 and I-19 operating in the area. The skipper called all hands to stations as sonar picked up faint pings. Possible contact, bearing 180, the operator reported. Tension mounted on the bridge, the anchored cargo net creaking against the strain of the waves. We altered course west, but the storm played havoc with the escorts. One corvette fell back, her engines struggling in the chop. That's when the torpedo wake appeared, a white streak cutting through the gray sea. The lead LST took evasive action, but the hit came midships on a Liberty ship astern, 500 tons of cargo gone in minutes, flames licking the water despite the rain. Debris floated past us, crates, oil slicks, men in the water calling out. I directed the crew to lower boats, but the skipper shook his head. Can't stop the convoy. Signal the destroyer. Fiction. His voice stayed level, but his knuckles whitened on the wheel. We pressed on, the loss rippling through the formation. That sinking forced a reroute, adding 12 hours to the voyage and burning extra fuel. Our tanks dropped to 60%. The outposts on Bougainville waited, their radios crackling with urgent requests for ammo as Japanese counterattacks intensified. This inflection shifted our approach. Convoys after that incorporated more air cover from escort carriers, reducing exposure time. Mobile repair tenders joined later runs, fixing damage at sea rather than in port. The storm and submarine strike highlighted how weather amplified threats, turning routine voyages into tests of endurance. Yet it reinforced the chain. One delay could stall an assault, but adaptive routing kept the flow steady. The anchored cargo net, now salt-crusted and frayed from the waves, symbolized the hold we maintained. It swayed in the hold below, a reminder that resupply wasn't just movement, but a calculated push against the elements. A common myth about Pacific resupply convoys holds that they succeeded mainly through overwhelming American naval firepower, with escorts easily brushing aside Japanese submarines. This overlooks the coordinated intelligence and adaptive tactics that truly sustained the flow. Memoirs from convoy commanders, like those in Admiral Samuel Eliot Morrison's History of United States Naval Operations in World War II, reveal a different reality. Submarines posed a persistent threat, sinking over 200,000 tons of Allied shipping in the Pacific during 1943 alone, according to U.S. Navy records. The fact is, success stemmed from integrated systems. Code-breaking via magic intercepts provided advance warnings of submarine positions, allowing reroutes that avoided 70% of potential engagements. Escort screens used sonar and hedgehog projectors, but the real edge came from hunter-killer groups formed after mid-1943, which accounted for 45 Japanese submarines sunk in the Solomons area by year's end. Evidence from the Naval Historical Center suggests that without these adaptations, supply lines could have faced delays of weeks, stalling island advances. This myth simplifies the craft involved: load calculations, weather routing, and radio silence drills that kept convoys moving. It diminishes the discipline of crews who turn data into decisions, a legacy seen in modern naval logistics. February 12, 1944. Ulithi Atoll, Caroline Islands. The USS LST-449 anchored in the lagoon, the water calm after weeks of rough seas. I leaned against the rail, the anchored cargo net dangling over the side, its ropes frayed from constant use and crusted with salt from the last run. We had pushed through the Central Pacific now, part of the fleet train supporting the push toward the Marianas. The air carried the scent of diesel and coral, mixed with the faint rot of low tide. Our hold was half empty after unloading at Kwajalein, but we reloaded fast, crates of .50 caliber ammo, jerry cans of diesel, and medical supplies for the Marines digging in on the atolls. The skipper gathered us on deck for briefing. Intel says subs are thick around here. I-41 spotted last week. His words hung in the humid air. I checked the manifest, 800 tons inbound from Peril, enough to fuel a carrier group's sortie. The net swung as the crew hoisted more crates, chains rattling in the quiet. Tension simmered below the routine, eyes glancing at the horizon where Japanese patrols could lurk. We weighed anchor at dawn, joining a convoy of 12 ships. Tankers heavy with avgas, Liberty ships stacked with construction gear. Escorts formed up, 4 destroyers and 2 escort carriers, their Wildcats, circling overhead. I stood watch in the supply shack, logging fuel burn, 200 gallons per hour at 12 knots. The sea rolled gentle, but reports from the bridge crackled over the intercom.
We've got it covered.
Contact bearing 045, range 10 miles. Sonar pinged steady, a rhythmic beep that set nerves on edge. The anchored cargo net creaked as waves slapped the hull. I stepped out scanning the water. A destroyer ahead accelerated, dropping ash cans, depth charges that boomed underwater, sending vibrations through our keel. Water fountained up, white and churning. No wreckage this time. We zigged left, course change unannounced to throw off any trailing subs. Hours passed in the heat, sweat soaking my shirt. A seaman handed me coffee, black and hot. Think they'll hit us today? Fiction. I shook my head. Focus on the net's knots. Night brought blackout, stars sharp above. I took the midwatch, the ship humming under my feet. Radar glowed in the dark, the operator murmuring fixes. Then the alarm. Torpedo wake, port side! The skipper ordered hard starboard, engines full. I braced against a bulkhead, the deck tilting. A streak cut the water, missing by yards. Bubbles hissing past. The escorts countered, hedgehogs firing forward, explosions lighting the sea. Debris surfaced, oil, metal scraps. One sub down, perhaps. Dawn revealed the cost. A tanker astern listed hit amidships, 10,000 barrels of fuel spilling into the ocean. Flames licked her deck, black smoke rising. We couldn't stop. The convoy pushed on. I directed salvage from what we could. The anchored cargo net lowered to pull in floating crates. Hands worked quick, hauling wet boxes aboard. The loss meant rationing at the next outpost, but we adapted, rerouted loads to cover gaps. By midday, we reached the anchorage at Eniwetok. Ramps down, the net swung out again, unloading in shifts. Seabees waded in, grabbing supplies for their bulldozers. Thanks for the run, one said. Taking a crate. Fiction. The weight lifted as cargo cleared, but the strain lingered. The close call fresh in mind. We had threaded another needle, supplies flowing despite the hit. The outposts strengthened, one delivery at a time. The anchored cargo net, now empty and still, hung as a quiet reminder of the hold we kept. The micro decisions during that February 1944 run to Ulithi Atoll rippled outward to the broader strategic picture in the Central Pacific. As supply officer, my choices on load distribution, prioritizing fuel drums over less critical gear, ensured the convoy maintained speed despite the torpedo strike. This kept the formation intact, allowing escorts to focus on threats rather than stragglers. On a macro scale, such adaptations enabled the seizure of key atolls, turning them into forward bases for the push to Saipan and Guam by June. Terrain played a central role. The Carolines' scattered islands offered hidden anchorages, but also funneled convoys through narrow passages, ideal for submarine ambushes. We navigated by dead reckoning when clouds obscured stars, using depth soundings to skirt reefs, echoes every 15 minutes to map the bottom. Weather factored heavily. Trade winds at 20 knots pushed us along, but stirred swells that masked periscope wakes. Communication relied on short-burst radios to avoid detection, with codes from the fleet's signal book dictating course changes. Logistics tied it all. Each LST like ours burned 4,800 gallons of diesel per day at cruising speed, a calculation I ran hourly to ration reserves after the tanker's loss. This connected to the island-hopping doctrine. Micro-level evasion tactics, like the zigzag patterns we employed, reduced overall convoy losses to under 5% in the Central Pacific by mid-1944. Macro effects showed in the buildup for major assaults. Supplies from these runs stocked 2.5 million gallons of avgas at Eniwetok, fueling B-29 raids on Japan. The anchored cargo net's role scaled up too. Rapid unloading via nets cut beach times from days to hours, allowing Seabees to construct piers that handled 10,000 tons weekly at forward Osis. Enemy submarines adapted with Chiton human torpedoes later, but our hunter-killer groups countered by integrating air patrols, sinking 57 Japanese subs in 1944 alone. The strategic shift. Convoys no longer just delivered, they enabled mobility, with fleet trains replenishing carriers at sea for continuous operations. This turned the Pacific from a barrier into a highway, shortening the war by months through sustained pressure. Reality check number 3. By 1944 U.S., convoys delivered 4.5 million tons of supplies to the Marianas Campaign, supporting 500,000 troops and 1,000 aircraft. U.S. Navy Bureau of Supplies and Accounts records. The system proved that disciplined micro-adjustments, lashings checked, courses plotted, built macro dominance, a legacy in how U.S. forces project power across oceans today. June 15, 1944. Saipan Anchorage, Mariana Islands. The USS LST-449 rocked in the swell as invasion beaches burned in the distance. I gripped the rail, the anchored cargo net heavy with crates of plasma, mortar rounds, and barbed wire. 1,000 tons total for this run, enough to fortify the beachhead against Japanese banzai charges. Smoke hung thick, carrying the acrid smell of cordite and diesel fires. Our convoy had threaded through the Philippine Sea, dodging submarine packs that had already claimed 2 tankers en route from Eniwetok. The air hummed with tension, planes roaring overhead from the escort carriers, their props slicing the humid dawn. As supply officer, I directed the unloading from the bridge wing. The ramp lowered with a hydraulic whine, splashing into the surf. Marines waded out, faces grim under helmets, hauling lines to the net. Prioritize the ammo, I called down. Fiction. A corporal nodded, water to his waist. The sea around us churned with landing craft, Higgins boats ferrying more troops ashore. Shells whistled inland, explosions rumbling like thunder. Japanese artillery answered from the hills, bracketing the water with geysers that soaked the deck. The skipper scanned the horizon through binoculars. Subs reported northwest. Keep it moving. His voice stayed even, but the strain showed in his set jaw. I checked the manifest again. Pencil scratching notes. Fuel drums shifted to balance the list from earlier waves. The net swung out, lowered by winch, crates thumping into the shallows. Hands grabbed them quick, passing along a human chain. Sweat stung my eyes, the sun climbing hot. Lookouts called contacts, shadows under the waves that could be reefs or periscopes. Mid-morning, the alarm blared. Enemy planes inbound! Zeros streaked in low from the north, machine guns chattering. Our AA guns opened up, tracers arcing skyward. A destroyer ahead erupted in fire. A bomb hit amidships. The convoy scattered, but we held position. Unloading couldn't stop. I ducked as a strafing run buzzed overhead, bullets pinging off the hull. The anchored cargo net jerked, a round clipping a rope. Crates tumbled into the water, bobbing like corks. "Secure that net!" I shouted, scrambling down the ladder. Fiction. The crew chief cursed, tying off the brake. Tension peaked as submarines joined the fray. Sonar pinged, frantic, from the escorts. "Contact close! Bearing 210!" A torpedo wake foamed toward us, straight for the bow. The skipper ordered full reverse, engines groaning in protest. I braced against the stanchion, the deck shuddering. The wake passed close, exploding harmlessly beyond. Depth charges rolled from the rails of a nearby destroyer, booms shaking the air, water columns rising high. Oil slicked the surface, wreckage floating up, twisted metal, a periscope bent. We pressed the unload, the net swinging again and again. Marines on the beach signaled urgent, their lines thinning under counterattacks. I tallied the offload. 600 tons gone in 3 hours, a record pace under fire. The hold lightened, the ship riding higher. A radio crackled from the beachmaster. "Need those mortars now!" We lowered the last batches, the net straining under the weight. Hands worked without pause, voices low but steady. A CB bulldozer churned sand nearby, building revetments with our wire. Afternoon brought the worst. A chitin, manned torpedo, launched from a hidden sub, streaking toward the convoy's center. Escorts fired wild, but it homed in on a Liberty ship laden with avgas. The explosion lit the sky, a fireball mushrooming upward, heat washing over us even at distance. Debris rained down, pattering on the deck like hail. The loss hit hard, 20,000 gallons gone, flames spreading on the water. I directed fire teams to hose the hull, preventing sparks from our own cargo. The anchored cargo net, now slick with oil, hung limp as we paused to assess. The skipper gathered officers on the bridge. "We finished this. Actual fiction." Nods all around, faces set. We resumed, the net in motion once more. Planes from Task Force 58 swept in, driving off the remaining Zeros. Sub-hunters circled, dropping more charges. By dusk, the hold stood empty, supplies ashore where they could turn the tide. Marines radioed thanks. Their push inland gained ground with our ammo. The beachhead held, airstrips taking shape under CB blades. As night fell, we weighed anchor, slipping out with the remaining escorts. The sea calmed, stars emerging. I stood watch, the empty net coiled on deck, a silent witness to the push. Exhaustion settled, but so did resolve. This run had tested every link, routes plotted, loads balanced, threats met. The outposts strengthened, the hop to Tinian now possible. Subtle pride rose in the quiet, the weight of the day lifting as we steamed south. The climax of that voyage marked not just delivery, but the craft that bound isolated points into a chain toward victory. The Saipan run marked a shift in the island-hopping campaign. Supplies from our convoy bolstered the beachhead, allowing Marines to expand inland and secure the airfield by July 9, 1944. That airstrip became a base for B-29s, their raids on Japan starting in November. The loss of the tanker during our voyage meant adjustments. Fuel rationed at forward posts, but the overall flow held. Convoys adapted with more oilers joining fleet trains, enabling underway replenishment that kept carriers operational for weeks without port calls. Ripple effects spread across the theater. The secured Marianas shortened supply lines by 1,000 miles, cutting voyage times from Pearl Harbor. This efficiency supported the push to the Philippines in October, where logistics sustained 200,000 troops in the initial landings. Lessons from submarine threats refined doctrines. Hunter-killer groups, now standard, sank 784 Japanese submarines by war's end, securing sea lanes. Technology evolved too. Improved sonar, like the QHB series, increased detection ranges to 2,000 yards, reducing convoy losses to under 1% by 1945. The human craft endured. Crews like ours, through disciplined routing and load management, turned isolation into strength. Records indicate U.S. convoys delivered 4.5 million tons of supplies to the Marianas campaign, supporting 500,000 troops and 1,000 aircraft. Another metric, Annual deliveries to Pacific bases reached 1.5 million tons, a steady pulse that outpaced Japanese interdiction. This adaptive support influenced U.S. maritime legacy. In Korea, amphibious resupply at Incheon echoed our beach unloads, using similar cargo nets for rapid transfer. Vietnam saw helicopter logistics build on our mobile tenders, projecting power over distance. The resolve in those voyages, calculations under strain, nets holding firm, shaped how America sustains extended campaigns, turning oceans into lifelines. The voyages through submarine threats taught us that resolve, in the face of isolation, forged unbreakable chains. Each convoy, each calculation of fuel and course, built a legacy of American maritime craft that turned vast oceans into pathways of victory. We adapted, from zigzag patterns to rapid unloads, ensuring outposts like Guadalcanal and Saipan held firm. The data endures. 1.5 million tons annually to bases, sustaining hops that shortened the war. This discipline influenced generations, shaping how U.S. forces sustain distant campaigns with ingenuity and stead. The anchored cargo net, once taut under strain, now rests as a symbol of the hold we kept. The anchored cargo net secured our deliveries, binding isolated outposts into a path toward lasting peace.